Hello and welcome to the second edition of Hot Routes. We're in our first week still, but really excited about the feedback we got from episode 1. Super excited to continue to be doing this twice a week. I am your host, Paul Hodowanic. With me today, the second part of Purple Insider, Sam Ekstrom. Sam, how are we doing today?
We're doing well, Paul. Glad to be on the show. It's an honor to be invited.
Wow.
Even though I'm part of the organization that hosts this, I still kind of feel excited to do this. Thanks for bringing me on board.
Well, it's an exclusive guest list, so we were able to slip you on first week. No promises after that. Who knows? It's just people are banging down the door trying to get on the Hot Route show. So we'll see where we can fit you in, but glad to get you in for the first week.
I'm like the house band. Same with Matthew. We're the tried and true. You can always bring us on anytime. We're always going to pick up the phone. Some of those other guys in this media market, I don't know if they're gonna respond, but no, we're always in to work with you, Paul.
Well, fantastic. And one thing for everyone watching, make sure to leave us questions down below. We're going to do a thing every week. We're going to answer one commenter's question. So question that you want Sam to answer, any of our future guests, me to answer, make sure to leave it down in the comments. So anything that sparks from this conversation or anything that you're seeing throughout the next week that you want answered on the next show, leave it down in the comments below on this video and we will pick one. So Sam, I'm just going to jump right into it. We have the Cowboys, or the Vikings have the Cowboys this week. Big game for where they're at currently. Really tough opponent. And most of that is because of that offense, because of that quarterback, because of Dak Prescott. And he's been playing super well. So my first question to you, in terms of all the quarterbacks in the league, where are you taking Dak just for a game, for right now, for how he's playing? Where does he stack up right now with some of the best in the game?
Oh man, I mean, it's a great question. And what a comeback story for Prescott to be in this position. All the props in the world to him. This is, everyone talked about the Alex Smith comeback last year. And this is, I don't know if the injury was quite as severe, but the comeback and the way he's playing is incredible. So hats off to Dak. And if you're talking about 1 year, 2021, who do you want? He might be number one. Like, I think long-term, I think I still take Mahomes over him. I still think he's the most special quarterback in the league. Lamar Jackson has kind of the playoff yips a little bit, but I still really like Lamar. I like Josh Allen, but Dak is a perfect meld. He's got that ability to run, but he's not reliant upon it. He can use his arm to make all the throws outside of the pocket, doesn't have accuracy issues, doesn't take a lot of sacks like Russell Wilson. And he's obviously surrounded by a lot of talent. So who do I take above Dak right now? I don't know. I think it might be him. Tom Brady, is still the GOAT. So I guess it's hard to deny what he's doing with Tampa right now and seems to be aging better and better all the time. But boy, Dak Prescott right now, if not for a last-second field goal against Tampa, they're 6-0. They would have beaten the Buccaneers in week 1. So I think I go with nobody above him. I think Dak is the best right now.
Yeah, for me, it came down to 4 names. It was Tom Brady, it was the way Kyler's playing right now, and it was Lamar Jackson. Those were kind of the 4 along with Dak Prescott. But just some stats. He's right now the 6th ranked quarterback according to PFF, 87.7 grade. That's the best of his career thus far. He said earlier this year, this is the best I'm playing so far in my career. It's the best PFF grade he's ever had, best big-time throw percentage he's had, lowest turnover-worthy play percentage he's had. So he's at the same time throwing and generating big plays while also not turning the ball over very much at all. And one of the things I think goes a little bit underrated is just his presence in the pocket and in the huddle and just reading defenses and dissecting what they're going to do. It's going to be a fascinating matchup with Mike Zimmer. Obviously, we know he likes to change things around, move people, especially on 3rd down. And to see Dak kind of dissect it and see where he wants to go with it and see if he can beat them, that's really going to be a really fun treat. But yeah, I think I'd have him second, maybe right behind Tom Brady. It's just hard with the way he's still playing to take anyone over Tom Brady. But I think Dak's right there. Kyler, Lamar. You can't go wrong with any of those. But Dak's kind of on another level right now. And I think we maybe weren't expecting it coming off the injury and everything that he's had. So it's really remarkable what he's done.
Yeah, one of my mantras is you can't always count on linear progress. And when you see Dak as a rookie, I think they won 13 games. And then they fall off. The coaching wasn't very good in Dallas. The defense wasn't very good in Dallas there. And Dak had trouble winning there for a 3-year stretch. Then he got hurt. And can you believe people were legitimately asking, should you pay Dak? Like, do you trust him with your franchise? How stupid does that question sound now after seeing what he's done through the first 6 games? If he's not the number 1 quarterback in the league right now, he's in the top 3 probably. And we don't know, like, if Kyler Murray is going to continue this. This is still pretty early in his resurgence. But I think we can assume that Dak is going to carry this on after what we've seen sort of leading up to it. And the way he's doing it, to me, seems pretty sustainable. So I really like Prescott as that top guy.
Awesome. Well, next question, another Vikings-Cowboys specific question. I want to know about matchups. I know you're big into watching the film, seeing what's going on, and kind of highlighting some of the things that it's going to be really important for this game this week. And so I want one matchup you're looking for, Vikings offense versus Cowboys defense, and then one matchup the other way around. So Vikings defense versus Cowboys offense. Where are you looking?
All right. I'm looking at individual players. I think Trevon Diggs against Justin Jefferson. Diggs is going to set the NFL interception record at this rate. He's got 7 through 6 games. He's got a 6-game interception streak. That's nuts. But I don't think it also tells the full story of Diggs' season. There are some flaws there. The interceptions are great, and as a result, like, his passer rating when targeted is very, very low, and that shoots him up the rankings. But he's also given up a pass of 35 yards or more in each of the last 5 games. I think he's not a shutdown corner. He's just an opportunistic ball hawk. He struggles tackling. He's penalty prone. He's tied for the league lead amongst corners and penalties with 6. So I don't think you need to be completely afraid of throwing Trevon Diggs' way. He's still in his 2nd season. He's still very young. Maybe don't throw him, jump balls or contested catches because he's going to come down with it. But I think he can be beaten. And against Justin Jefferson, and I assume they'll be matched up because Diggs usually takes the top guy. I think Jefferson can still win a lot of those battles as good as he is. So I really am watching that one closely. I want to see if Kirk Cousins has the cojones to kind of attack Diggs, that number 1 corner for Dallas. Other side of the ball. The Cowboys don't have La'el Collins on the offensive line. They have someone called Terrence Steele as their right tackle. Maybe the most anonymous guy on that Cowboys offensive line. But he's been really good. He's an undrafted free agent last year, and he's been playing awesome the last 5 games. He's probably going to go up against Danielle Hunter. So that's what I'm watching. I think that, pardon, this voice is going crazy right now.
Bye week, but you're still feeling the effects. It sounds like you need some more time.
I was on the beach all weekend, which is, that could be harder work than you think because,
sure.
The cocktails flow and you talk loudly. Anyway, I think that Danielle Hunter has to exploit the inexperience of Terrence Steele. I mean, that might be the one opening where you can get some pressure on Prescott because I don't know if you're going to beat Tyron Smith, on the other side with Everson Griffin. I think you got to go try to attack the younger kid, Terrence Steele, and try to get pressure that way.
Yeah. I'll comment first on the Vikings offense, Cowboys defense one. That was one of the ones I was looking for. And it was more, for me, it was Kirk versus Trayvon. Is what can Diggs try to goad Kirk into doing, trying to get him to throw a ball that maybe could be intercepted? And what can Kirk do to because we know he's susceptible. He had the pick 6 and then immediately gave up a touchdown on the next play. I think Dallas's last game, I think that was the order of how it went. And so you see the good and the bad right there. He's got a middle of the pack PFF grade because of it. He's just so volatile. And so Kirk Cousins, another volatile quarterback, and he's been really good this year. So can he take advantage of him? Who's going to win that matchup of can Diggs catch Kirk slipping or the other way around, and what can happen there? But the one I want to go with is Randy Gregory versus Christian Darrisaw. If that's the matchup that's on that side, Randy Gregory, 3rd overall, or 3rd ranked, I think, according to PFF on the defensive line. He's got 22 total pressures already this year, 4 sacks. He's been a game wrecker, and Christian Darrisaw, it's only going to be his 2nd start. He's been, pretty solid so far in the first start and the minimal snaps we saw. But I mean, he's going to go against one of the best rushers he's going to see all season. And if Gregory has his way with him, Kirk has struggled so far this year when pressured. I think PFF grade low 50s, bottom 3rd. So not great against pressure this season for Kirk. And if that just isn't a reoccurring thing where they need to move help over to that side, where they're constantly chipping him, where Dalvin has to stay in, then that's just going to make it that much harder. And so that's where I'm looking is, can Randy Gregory, can Christian Darrisaw just minimize Gregory enough? Can they throw the ball quickly to minimize him? So that's where I'm looking on that offensive line spot. And then for the Vikings defense, Cowboys offense, it's still with Dak for me, and it's a different matchup. It's Dak versus Zimmer, and I mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but what can Zimmer dial up to try to confuse Dak? He doesn't do that very easily. Dak doesn't confuse very easily. So what can Zimmer do? Dial things up, because the wide receivers on the Cowboys side are just so much better than the Vikings cornerbacks. However you want to look at it, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Gallup, I think is cleared, at least from the injured reserve. I don't know if he's going to play, but they have Dalton Schultz at tight end, so they have so many weapons. And so it's going to be I think scheme is really going to have to play a big part in this if they're going to try to stop that Dallas offense at all. So it's, what can Zimmer do to neutralize Dak? Those are the places I'm looking.
Yeah, and on that last point, they haven't neutralized this offense the last 2 years. Remember, this is the third straight year they've played. 2019 was one of the most impressive offensive performances in defeat that I've ever seen from Dallas. I mean, the Vikings hardly slowed them down, but they came up with one big stop on the final drive, and it ended up getting them the victory because their offense was very good. Last year was another shootout at US Bank Stadium, 31-28 Dallas, and that was with Andy Dalton. That was with CeeDee Lamb as a rookie, right? And Lamb, I think, is even better now and on track to be one of the best receivers in the NFL in a short time. So I think that you haven't done it the last 2 years. You got to do something there. And I love your Gregory versus Darrisaw point. That's a pretty anonymous defensive line right now for the Cowboys. DeMarcus Lawrence is out, and they have a pretty robust rotation. They're going to play 8 or 9 guys. And Gregory is the blue chipper there. I mean, he's the one everyone knows about, hasn't fulfilled his potential, and is kind of just turning a corner now for Dallas. Last year a little bit, and now this year he's playing really well. And he's not going to play, he's probably going to play 40, 45 snaps. I mean, he's going to be part of that rotation, but on third downs, that's where you got to be watchful. That's where you need to have your protector out in front of Kirk, making sure that if Gregory gets by, that you've got someone to chip and to make sure he doesn't get to the quarterback.
Yeah, well, let's do one more Vikings question before we go a little bit more around the NFL. And so this one came off of the bye week and just kind of thinking long-term about where the Vikings are at, where their contract situation's at, where Zimmer's at. And so I thought, okay, normally we think Cousins, Zimmer tied at the hip, one goes, the other goes. But what if that's not the case? What if we can only pick one? And so I'm not asking you what's the most likely, because with Kirk's contract and the way Zimmer's been just kind of up and down this season, it's already felt like it feels like Kirk is the most likely to stay. But if you, looking for the long-term viability of the Vikings franchise, if that's all you have in mind, and you can only have one past this year, who would you take, Cousins or Zimmer?
Another great puzzling question. And I think it's a little bit of a fluid answer, because heading into the year, you overwhelmingly say that you hang on to Zimmer, because the Cousins contract ultimately is an albatross. And you look at how successful teams are built in this league, they capitalize on the rookie contract of their young quarterbacks, and they build around that. And once those bigger contracts kick in, it becomes harder to win. And no matter how good Kirk is, unless he's one of those top 5 quarterbacks that we were discussing earlier, the Daks, the Murrays, the Josh Allens, or like a Hall of Famer like Brady and Rodgers, it's hard to say that that's viable long term, even though I do think it's shifted more in that direction, where you look at the way Kirk's playing and you look at what Zimmer is supposed to be doing Zimmer's responsibilities are make the defense good and make the right decisions in game. And I think that the defense has been fine, good, not great. And the decision-making is sometimes head scratching. So plus when you have a defensive minded head coach, it's harder to have continuity on offense, because your coordinators are going to get snatched up right and left. If you have any kind of success, which Cousins coordinators usually do, because Cousins is has that high floor where it's kind of tantalizing when teams see, oh, a top 10 offense. Nice. We'll hire this guy. So I think while there's a case to say, well, Cousins is the guy to keep around, I think you have to look at the money. You have to look at the salary cap and say, all right, this guy is good, but for team building purposes, this is not a Super Bowl winning model.
Yeah, for sure. I'll let you take a break there, get the voice in order while I go. Um, I think, yeah, I think the way he's played so far, for me, it's Kirk at this moment, and it's for a factor. It's for a number of reasons. One, we've seen him do some things this year that we hadn't seen him do before, namely make some of those game-winning drives at the end of games to get them in it, to at least get field goals. We hadn't seen that in the past. He's playing super well, and it is also what Zimmer's not doing. And part of me just thinks, what can Kirk do if he has an offensive head coach who isn't so beholden to running the ball early on early downs? That's been a constant through every coordinator. So I think it's safe to assume it's no longer the coordinator. That's a Zimmer philosophy. The coordinators are a little bit hamstrung about what Zimmer's doing or what Zimmer wants to do. And so I'd love to see him in an offense. I'm not saying this is what would happen, but just Stafford goes to the Rams and he looks really, really good with a guy like Sean McVay, an offensive mastermind, and you see the way he plays. Stafford might have a little bit more natural ability, but Kirk is right up there. He's got the arm for it. He can be really good. And so part of me just wants to see that. And so if I'm picking one, it feels like where I'd go is Kirk, especially there's not much in the draft this year. So if you were ditching one, then for next year, it's like, okay, is Kellen Mond starting? Are you taking a dice roll with the quarterbacks who aren't very good in this class? Are you trying to find someone out in free agency or on the trade block? And so just for availability reasons, I think it's Kirk. And yes, the contract is bad, but I think when you're looking at one of these two options, that's the lesser evil, I think, is taking Kirk and trying to put him in with an offensive guy and see where he goes. Now, you don't know if that coach is going to be as good as Zimmer. That's what Caller always says is, I mean, be careful what you wish for, because it could be, it could be a Patricia, Jim Caldwell situation. You just never know. So that's always looming in the background. But for me, if I'm picking one, it's Kirk for me.
I love that you disagree with me, and I love this question because your argument makes a ton of sense. And I'm biased, but my argument I thought made sense too, and I think both arguments are reasonable. Like, I think that this is kind of a toss-up question, especially the way the first 6 games of this season has gone. So I come back to the money side of it, but I think what you're looking at is more so the difficulty that you might have finding a better quarterback, because it is so hard to find someone that's going to be better than Kirk Cousins. Maybe you find someone as good or with the potential to be as good, but improving on Kirk Cousins means finding one of the 5 to 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL at a given time. And that's dicey because the definition of what makes a good quarterback is changing. You're not looking strictly for pocket passers anymore. You're trying to find that guy that can throw and run. And those guys are probably a little more volatile, a little more injury prone, and there's just less data about them, out there. So that makes the conversation all the more intriguing, because you can't just look for another Kirk Cousins archetype and think, he's just, 10% better. You're looking for a totally different archetype.
For sure. And now let's jump quickly to our last 2 hot routes. First, we're going to talk about some of those young quarterbacks that are playing really well. One in particular, Joe Burrow this last week against the Ravens played super well. And so that kind of sparked the question. 2 years ago, Bengals took Joe Burrow number 1 overall. At the number 6 pick, the Chargers picked Justin Herbert. So those are kind of the 2 that are in this question right now. Tua is kind of off in his own bucket, struggling. But to you, did the Bengals pick the right quarterback if we're looking back right now?
Yeah, I think they did. The rocket arm of Herbert is, really impressive. But, who's to say that if Burrow doesn't play the whole 2020, that, the stats look more similar, or the win total looks more similar. Remember, Herbert didn't really start winning until week 13 of last year. He started as the 3-9 quarterback. And the way they're both playing this year, I don't think there's a gigantic chasm between them, maybe a little more raw talent that we're seeing in Herbert. But again, Burrow, I don't think was 100% starting the year. I think that was pretty clear against the Vikings. And now he's sort of settling into his own. I think the charisma of Burrow is awesome. I think they've put now some weapons around him, which is great. And I think he's pretty clutch. So the arm talent of Herbert is compelling, but I still think that Burrow is the guy. And I don't think there was any question about that coming out of college either. I mean, I think you had to go that route. I don't think there was really much debate. And I think you can feel good about where they're at. They're number one in the AFC right now, for gosh sakes. That's pretty impressive. So,
For sure.
yeah, Herbert is nice, and we'll see him in 2 weeks with the Vikings. But no, I'm going to go with Burrow.
Yeah, I think it's a question of if you're going to take just the pure arm talent, which I think is pretty clearly Justin Herbert. The things that he can do just throwing the football are eye-popping and just a little bit more than Joe Burrow has in terms of arm strength. And yeah, just the physical tools, you go Herbert. But the things you say, the intangibles, the clutch, the charisma, Burrow seems to have those things. And so again, it wasn't really a question coming out. Herbert won, or Burrow won, Herbert a little later. And so, yeah, I think the Bengals obviously made the right choice in the moment. There was no other choice for them at that point. And I'm just excited that there's two really, really good quarterbacks, both in the AFC, both assumingly are going to duke it out for a long time, because they're very similar in terms of PFF grade. And I was going to mention the injuries as well. We just don't know what Burrow would have done if he had that time to develop a little bit towards the end of last year. And now finally he's getting some weapons. Herbert always had the luxury of having Keenan Allen, and Burrow, now that we see he has a number one option in Jamar Chase, has become really, really dynamic. Let's jump just to our final question, our final hot route. And this stems a little bit from Monday night. I don't know if you've been watching the ManningCast. That has been all I've been watching. I'm not the first one to say I've really enjoyed it and thought it was really, really great. Last Monday, they had Tom Brady on and Marshawn Lynch and some great ones. But I want to focus a little bit on Tom Brady because he was answering some things really, really truthfully. And so my question to you is, if you had Tom Brady, if you had the rapport with him like the Mannings do, and you were able to get one truthful answer out of Tom Brady, you knew it was going to be the truth, the whole truth, what question are you asking him?
I think the obvious one is sort of around the one skeleton in his closet that we know about. What was the deal with the deflated footballs?
Yeah.
What was up with that? Did you need to do that? I mean, did you need that little advantage? And if you're doing that, what other little liberties did you take with New England? We know the reputation of the Patriots. And was that a you thing? Was that a Belichick thing? Let's spill the beans on why that was necessary. And why, did you fight it so hard? I think just getting the full unadulterated truth on that little fiasco would be pretty compelling, because there's not a lot of dirt on Brady, right? That's kind of the only thing that you can really knock him for, unless I'm forgetting something obvious. But I think Brady he's a great ambassador for the game, right? And he's like, the way that he has made himself available, like despite his superstar status, he's pretty willing to go out there and put himself out there and talk and join stuff like the ManningCast, which I respect a lot. So yeah, just give me some details on the sordid nature of Deflategate, and then we'll be square.
Yeah, I think that was it. Deflategate, Spygate, maybe thoughts on leaving Belichick, how that went down.
Spygate, yeah. Shouldn't have overlooked that.
The one, maybe I just ask him, like, does Gronk, does that like shtick ever get like a little old with him? Like, I know, do you ever just, are you like, come on, like, could you watch some film, or could you do this or do that? I imagine he's a great teammate to have around, but I think I just, you ever get on your nerves? I mean, you're basically a married couple at this point for how long you guys have been together. Like, it's just gotta get a little tiring at some point. So maybe that's probably my funny question I ask him, see if we can get some real thoughts on Gronk, but that's probably where I go.
Yeah. And just in general, like, how do you be the type of teammate you are? Like, how do you have the energy to deal with all the personalities? Because it seems like Brady is able to, like, invite someone like Antonio Brown to come live with him, or be buddies with Gronk, or, get along with the coaching staff pretty well. And he seems to be able to kind of reach out and ingratiate with all different types of people, which that's a skill in itself, just to have the bandwidth for all of that. That's got to be a big part of his success, I think.
Well, Sam, I really appreciate you joining me on this second episode of Hot Routes. It was a great time. Again, leave your questions down below. We'll answer one in the next show. But Sam, thank you so much.
Not even this very expensive microphone is good enough to cover up my awful voice today, but I appreciate everyone for watching.
All right. See ya.